Imagine yourself on a freezing night in Paris, the streets deserted, an unsettling silence enveloping the city. It is in this heavy atmosphere that a police patrol moves slowly, its headlights cutting through the shadows of the streetlights on the empty sidewalks. It is then that an improbable scene unfolds before them. A dog, frail, with scattered fur, stands right in the middle of the road, its piercing gaze filled with an inexplicable urgency. This seemingly simple gesture will lead the officers into an adventure that will mark them for life. But why did this dog stop them in the middle of the street? Discover the heart-wrenching story that will make you cry. The night patrol moves silently through the streets of Paris. Louise, sitting in the front, watched the sidewalks emptied of passers-by, her mind elsewhere. Then suddenly a flash of movement. A dog. It was there, standing in the road, its thin silhouette in the darkness. Its eyes, though tired, shone with an indescribable determination. Louise instinctively felt there was something special in its gaze, something she couldn't ignore. Arnaud, her partner, braked sharply. "What's that dog doing there?" he murmured. Louise felt a strange warmth spread inside her as the dog stared at them, its eyes filled with a palpable urgency. "I think it needs us, Arnaud. Let's follow it," she said, almost without thinking. Without waiting for his response, she opened the door and stepped into the unknown. The dog didn't hesitate for a second. As soon as the door opened, it turned from the road and darted into the dark alleyways, making sure they followed. Louise glanced at Arnaud, who, initially skeptical, finally followed her with determination in his eyes. The further they went into the maze of narrow streets, the more Louise felt a strange pressure building inside her. This dog, despite its thinness and neglected fur, seemed to know exactly where it was going. It slowed down, waited for them to catch up, then moved on, as if telling them, "Hurry, there's no time to lose." Louise felt as if she were being swept up by a wave of conflicting emotions, curiosity, concern, but also a strange sense of destiny. Arnaud, increasingly doubtful, murmured, "This is crazy, Louise. This dog is leading us straight into a trap." But Louise, her eyes fixed on the animal, replied firmly, "I'm sure it knows what it's doing. We're continuing." She had an inexplicable but total trust. They finally arrived in a neglected neighborhood, far from the usual vibrancy of Parisian streets. The buildings were old, dilapidated, and the air carried a palpable heaviness. It was here that the dog stopped in front of a wooden door, weathered by time. It gently placed its paw on the door, as if signaling for them to enter. Once the door was opened, a chilling scene unfolded before them. Total darkness, a sharp odor hanging in the air. Then, in a dark corner of the room, a human form curled up. Louise stepped forward, her heart racing. There on an old mattress, an elderly woman, Madame Claire, was breathing faintly. Her wrinkled, pale face and her glassy eyes showed that she was on the brink of life. Beside her, an empty bowl of water. The dog lay next to her, resting its head on her hand, in a silent gesture of tenderness. Louise felt a wave of compassion. "This dog, it did everything to keep her alive," she murmured, moved. Arnaud, on the other hand, was at a loss for words. He took out his phone to call for help, but in his eyes it was clear that what they had just discovered went beyond anything they had imagined. The dog silently stayed near Madame Claire, faithful and protective. Louise then understood that this animal, far more than just a stray dog, had taken on the role of protector, guardian angel. It had risked its own life to stay by the elderly woman's side, never wavering. It had seen its mistress deteriorate, and in one last effort had sought help, tirelessly, until it crossed paths with Louise and Arnaud's patrol. When the ambulance sirens pierced the air, the dog seemed to relax. The mission was accomplished, but its gaze, filled with gratitude and calm, seemed to say it had found peace. Louise touched, placed her hand on its head, thanking the animal with all her heart. But the story doesn't end there. As the paramedics arrived and took care of Madame Claire, the dog refused to leave its spot. It stayed by her side like a family member, an unwavering protector. Louise, however, stood beside it, unwilling to leave it there alone. She pleaded with the paramedics to allow the dog to accompany its mistress to the hospital. Their determination struck a chord. The dog climbed into the ambulance, lay next to Madame Claire, offering its unshakable support once more. At the hospital, Louise stayed with the dog. In the waiting room, the dog couldn't tear its eyes away from the door behind which Madame Claire had disappeared. It was motionless, silent, its eyes fixed on the emptiness, waiting. Louise, silent, watched it, moved by this absolute loyalty. She realized that an invisible bond had formed between them. This dog, this being of infinite tenderness, had shown an unparalleled fidelity, the very kind she herself cherished in her human relationships. She knew she would do anything for this dog. Hours later, a doctor arrived to give her news of Madame Claire. Thanks to the help of this dog, Madame Claire had survived longer than expected. Without it, she probably wouldn't have lasted. Louise felt a shiver of emotion, and as the doctor explained, he added that Madame Claire had asked to see her dog as soon as she regained consciousness. "She considers him a member of her family," he said with some admiration. Louise then understood the immense love they shared. A few hours later, the doctor came with some good news. Madame Claire was doing better. She had survived. Louise moved, turned to the dog and smiled, happy to see it finally relax. Then in a gentle gesture, the nurse offered to take the dog to see its mistress. Louise, tears in her eyes, agreed without hesitation. She understood that this meeting, this bond, would change their lives forever. This dog was no longer just a rescue animal. It was a symbol of pure, unshakable love, a hero without a cape, a loyal friend. That evening, Louise understood that sometimes love and loyalty are not measured by appearances, but by the depth of the bond that unites us. She would never leave this dog, this protector, this noble soul without a home, because through its gaze, she had seen the true definition of fidelity, courage, and unconditional love. One gesture, one meeting, one life changed forever. And would you be ready to offer a second chance to a heart as pure as this dog's?